Today, the committee will hear a package of green roof and renewable energy bills. As land continues to be replaced with impervious surfaces due to population growth and urbanization, the necessity to recover green space is becoming increasingly critical to maintain environmental quality. We need to use every hour in our quiver to reach that mandate.
Over 70% of global emissions come from cities because we consume more energy and produce more waste. We are ranked in the top 25 cities in the country with the worst air pollution. Cities across the country and the world have already stepped up with progressive green roof legislation, meaning we are behind. We have 2.6 million square feet of rooftops in the city. This means we have acres of opportunity to reduce our carbon footprint. It would be irresponsible to leave these roofs to bake in the hot sun when we could be harnessing them to cool down our city. It is up to cities like New York to lead the fight against climate change.
We need to move to a 100% renewable future in New York City. We are far past where we need to be. I just want to point to not just legislation necessarily, but to the impacts on communities like the Rockaways. I've already told any developer who's coming into the Rockaways who wants to develop that they have to do solar. It's not a choice, it is mandatory. And I could tell you, we have residents who are probably paying like $3 in electricity a year because we've done this.
Building rooftops have far more to contribute than a great vantage point to an iconic skyline. With the right incentives for building owners, rooftops can play a role in generating renewable energy, improving the quality of New York City's surrounding waterways, and increasing the resiliency to stronger rain, storms, and heat, while contributing and enhancing the quality of life within our neighborhoods. At present, there are 3 primary city-supported options for building owners to make improvements that offer environmental and economic benefits. As of 2016, the Nature Conservancy estimates that there were over 1,200 vegetated roofs covering about 60 acres across the city, a small portion of the total 40,000 acres of citywide rooftops. The city's ultra-urban landscape is mostly impervious and can't absorb stormwater, so rain must flow from streets and rooftops into the sewer system. DEP's $1.5 billion Green Infrastructure Program supports projects such as green roofs, rain gardens, and permeable pavements to reduce CSOs and promote the health of the harbor. Part of DEP's nationally recognized Green Infrastructure Program is the grant program for private property. DEP has the highest green roof incentive in the nation at $30 per square foot. Solar installations have increased nearly 7-fold since Mayor de Blasio took office, providing more than 170 megawatts of electrical capacity, cutting carbon emissions by 36,000 tons each year, and supporting over 4,000 jobs across the 5 boroughs. The cost of solar has decreased over 25% since 2013. Lower costs, paired with some of the highest electricity prices in the nation, continue to make solar an attractive option, for property owners often recouping their investment within years. Solar can be paired with either green roofs or cool roofs, both of which can actually increase the amount of electricity produced by a solar installation. In addition, New York State introduced community shared solar, which enables renters and others who are unable to install their own systems to access the benefits of solar. As part of Cool Neighborhoods NYC, the city's comprehensive resiliency program designed to keep New Yorkers safe during extreme heat, the administration has prioritized the New York City NYC Cool Roofs program in the heat-vulnerable areas of the South Bronx, Central Brooklyn, and Northern Manhattan to conduct strategic outreach to owners over the current years. The successful program provides job seekers with training and work experience to install reflective rooftops. Cool Roofs reduces roof temperature, helping to cut carbon emissions by transferring less heat into the buildings, which in turn helps reduce energy consumption and wasted heat from air conditioning. In addition, Cool Roofs extend the lifespan of rooftops and HVAC equipment, contribute to the thermal comfort of building residents, and when clustered can provide a cooling effect to surrounding areas. NYC Cool Roofs offers cool roof installations at no cost or low cost to affordable housing, nonprofits, hospitals, and community centers. In sum, requiring that new construction incorporate a combination of sustainable rooftop solutions, as described, would help developers install cool roofs and solar or green roofs where it makes most financial and logistical sense. Moreover, adding these features to a building before it is constructed can ensure that the structures are built into the design of the property. The administration supports efforts to expand green and blue roofs, cool roofs, solar systems, or a combination thereof on commercial and residential buildings.
As the impacts of climate change worsen in cities, we need policies like those you have proposed to utilize our roofs and walls for both a reduction in greenhouse gases and to adapt to climate change impacts like those we saw at Superstorm Sandy. We work with policymakers in cities across North America to craft effective policies to grow the green roof market. In essence, green roofs cannot be imported from China or Mexico and by their nature create truly sustainable local job opportunities. Some of these employment opportunities are well suited to marginalized populations within urban areas and can contribute to greater social justice. 1 year of employment in the green roof industry is generated from $45,000 to $65,000 in investment because green roofs are labor intensive. Green roofs are not a radical idea or policy direction. It's time New York joins other world-class cities and utilizes these wasted spaces to fight climate change and prepare for its impact.
We offer design, build, maintenance services for green roofs. The vendors that we work with have designed hundreds of thousands of square feet of green roofs over the last 10 years or so. There's many more benefits not mentioned here, including the long tail of tax revenue that can come from the maintenance of these green roofs, as well as the skilled job creation that green roofs bring to a city. One reason why the New York City property tax abatement was too low and why I definitely stand for raising it to $15, basically the upfront requirement to get started with a green roof property tax filing and the surveying to retain an architect and whatnot can be $5,000 to $8,000 at the low end, and if you're only getting back $5.23 per square feet, that means the cutoff size is somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. Just for context, a brownstone is about 800 square feet with about 500 square feet plantable area, so moving it up to $15 would get you there because the going rate's about $15 to $30 in New York City. I'm going to zero in today on the benefits of integrating green roofs with solar. A lot of people think that these two technologies are competitors. They do compete for real rooftop space right now, but that's only because people aren't aware of how they can be integrated together. Not only can they be physically integrated in the same space, that they actually work together harmoniously and synergistically, they boost each other's performance. A quick overview of how this happened is that plants, through the process of phytoremediation, they actually sweat through their pores or the stomata in the leaves. This process is called transpiration. This act of sweating cools the air around them. In summary, every solar panel below a certain base case, which is 77 Fahrenheit, for every degree that the ambient air reaches around that solar panel, they lose efficiency. So if you can somehow keep the air around them cooler, you boost the performance of that solar panel in terms of its ability to produce electricity. This was a study done on a Con Ed building. Average rooftop temperatures for black roofs as of April onwards can hit 150 up to 170 Fahrenheit. That's a full 100 degrees Fahrenheit above the base case study. Green roofs basically reduce the temperature ceiling up on those rooftops, keeping them at a maximum of, say, 90 or 100 Fahrenheit, which can claw back upwards of 15, 20, 22% efficiency.
As noted in testimony Rebney submitted to this committee last month, the challenges posed by climate change are profound and merit significant attention. Indeed, that is why we support the Council's efforts to find smart, targeted ways of reducing building energy consumption, and it is also why many of our members have already taken significant steps to improve energy efficiency, cut energy use, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. These bills would mandate the installation of solar panels, green roofs, or wind turbines in various degrees on different types of buildings. The interaction of these bills is notable given concerns about these measures that they do not provide sufficient guidance on whether they would apply to new construction only or if they would also apply to existing structure under certain circumstances, as we've discussed. Practical factors will also complicate the ability of building owners to comply with this legislation. Specifically, such a requirement would create a conflict with the zoning code. In high-density residential districts, the zoning resolution controls for the provision of open space. This requirement is often fulfilled with the provision of set-aside rooftop space for tenant access and recreation. The bill as drafted would require an open space encroachment that would negate a requirement already adopted by this body. This legislation does not sufficiently recognize these potential complications. Finally, key terms in the bills, including rooftop and mechanical equipment, are not defined and should be refined in order to provide more clarity as to what is meant by those terms. As an alternative, given the complexities raised by amending the building code in these ways, Rebney encourages that these issues be more fully considered as part of the Department of Building's ongoing building code revision process. If the Council does choose to move forward with these measures, we would welcome the chance to discuss ways of crafting legislation that achieves our shared goals of reducing building energy consumption, restricting greenhouse gas emissions, and ultimately limiting the harmful effects of climate change.
The QC that we're using, and most of the industry is using, is called electric field vector mapping, which in simple terms, a electrical pulsating charge is put into the deck underneath the green roof, and the surface is wetted down. So if there's any void in the waterproofing, any damage, The electricity will flow through the waterproofing, and they'll detect it on the top side with the electrical detector, and they vector in on the spot where the defect or the damage is, and you have a very simple fix. So what happens when a roof leaks? It's not a big deal. Secondly, what about root damage? Well, we have root barriers that are proven. We have standards that address long-term performance, and root damage is no longer an issue. Do green roofs protect or hurt roofs? Some people will tell you they hurt roofs. There's not a lot of truth to that. If a waterproofing material is used, it will protect the environment. In a conventional green roof assembly, the membrane is protected by the insulation and the soil and the vegetation. So you've taken away virtually everything that hurts a green roof. It's pretty much accepted within the industry that a protected green roof will last 2 to 3 times longer than a conventional roof. Standard roof lasts 17 years, and a green roof lasts 3 times that much. We've reduced 9 million tons going to the dump every year for the extra years that we've saved. All types of roofing are net polluters. They all, between manufacturing, installation, and disposal, they all are net polluters. With green vegetated roofs, for the first time, our industry can become a net contributor to the environment. And if that's not enough reason to enact the legislation you're talking about, I don't know what is.
We are a global conservation organization, the biggest in the world. We operate in all 50 states and in 70 countries. We also run urban conservation programs in more than 25 cities across the United States. Many people in this room know that nature and all things green play a crucial role in the life of New York City, and that our rooftops are a largely untapped resource that offer a suite of compelling and multiple benefits to our communities. I won't enumerate these all, but I would like to put this in context that by 2080, we expect that the frequency of heat waves will triple, and that we will see 1.5 more times extreme precipitation events. Green roofs play a critical role in absorbing stormwater and in mitigating extreme heat, so we know that this asset is necessary. Our research found that as of 2016, of the approximately 1 million buildings in the city, that if you put them together that constitute an entire borough's worth of land, that less than 750 of them have green roofs. Not only is the percentage low, we also found that the majority of those roofs are in Manhattan, particularly downtown Manhattan. So as we think about issues of equity and real need across our city, we know that this asset is not yet reaching the neighborhoods that need it most. We want to encourage that when looking at the potential option to expand green roofs across the city, let's take a look at where they're most needed. For example, priority watersheds by DEP. We can also look at the heat vulnerability index as designated by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and open space starved communities and schools.
One thing I'd like to throw in here is, there's a lot of potential for developing the rooftops in New York City, but frankly, we don't know what's available. To do the initial engineering survey, the structural survey, to see what's available for rooftops, it can be very cost prohibitive. At the low end, it can be $3,000 to $5,000 for like a small building. And while it is retroactively reimbursed through the DEP grant program, it's only reimbursed if you wind up going into the DEP grant program. And so this can be a bit of a barrier to entry. I would like to propose somehow, earmarking funds or incentivizing or subsidizing a structural survey of all the rooftops in the city, just to know what's up there, what's available.
Right, maybe through the form of a tax abatement. I think that we would be prevented from giving a direct grant, perhaps. But
regardless of what direction you go with it, let's see what we have available to work with across the city.
If you have a 10-story building surrounded on all sides by 20-story buildings and the sun never hits the top of the roof, is there any use to putting a green roof there or a solar panel?
I would say absolutely yes.
Okay.
There are low light requirements for certain vegetation that can prosper in that type of environment, and you're still absorbing the precipitation that falls on the roof, which is the number one driving force behind the green roof development.
When we build a green roof, we strive to recreate the natural environment up on the rooftop. And if you think of a forest, there's plenty of shady forests with plant life growing down underneath the tree canopy. To this gentleman's point here, there are plenty of plant species that are shade tolerant and actually require the shade. And so it is entirely possible to build a green roof in a mostly shady area. There's been advancements in the world of solar, rooftop solar, in terms of microinverters that allow for portions of shade to fall on the solar array and not impact the other panels. But if no sunlight ever hits that rooftop, no, there's no point, in my opinion, in putting a solar PV electric array up there. But a green rooftop, yes, there still is a point. If you go through all of the benefits that a green roof offers, is there a better measure that a building owner can undertake to combat one of these issues you see here on the left-hand side? If you go on a line-by-line basis, yeah. If you're trying to reduce energy consumption, and that's your only goal, then a lighting retrofit would probably be a better bang for your buck with a higher ROI. Is there a more efficient way to grow agriculture up on your roof or in the building? Maybe vertical farming, yeah. Or insulate your building or reduce the solar gain. The Cool Roofs program is very effective by that one measure. No technology, no implementation or upgrade to a building is going to get you a wide array of benefits as a green roof does. Are we going to potentially come across a building that, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense for a green roof? Sure, I'm not sure right now what that would be. Maybe an extremely sloped roof with, like a 70 degree pitch or something, just so people understand you can build green roofs on sloped rooftops. We do it all the time. So it depends on what your goal is, but I think it's definitely worth exploring and looking at the viability across every rooftop in New York City.
The other thing is that you have to look at the city as a whole, as a system and an environment, and without enough coverage on the rooftops, you're not going to get the environmental impacts that you need, and that could actually lead to more costly implications in the future. One of the driving forces for Chicago to implement mandated green roofs was because they had to replace their sewer system, which couldn't take the stormwater runoff in the city, which would have been billions of dollars in infrastructure improvement that they avoided by putting green roofs on a certain percentage of buildings in the city. So perhaps you might want to set goals of percentage, if that makes more sense than if you feel like a particular mandate wouldn't work.
And I would also like to point out that the benefits the green roof offer, they transcend not only environmental benefits, but there's economic and social benefits as well. And these benefits as well also serve the building owner and the occupants, as well as the general public at large.
One quick word about maintenance. Generally speaking, we do not use grass on vegetated roofs. The most common plant species are sedum, and the maintenance on those after the first year of establishment is typically twice a year. So we're not up there mowing the lawn once a week, and
we design them to be like highly tolerant to drought and low maintenance as possible. I'd say two things. One, we need to educate people about these economic benefits so that they understand that constructing a green roof is not just some charitable donation that you're making to the birds and the bees and the butterflies, but it's a selfish investment that you will make a return on that investment.
Absolutely.
PACE financing, are you familiar with PACE financing?
No, not at all.
So it's a property assessed clean energy. And so this has been passed in many states. Usually it gets passed statewide.
What is PACE again? I'm sorry.
We have a bill on PACE as well.
But we don't have that in New York.
Not it's in every county in New York State except New York City for some reason, but it's inevitable, I believe. But long story short, it allows investments in clean energy retrofits to a building to be two things. One, fused to the property itself, not to the building owner, in that it's paid as a line item on the property taxes.
Absolutely.
And number two, the payments are spread out over a 25 to 35 year long scale. And they're actually designed so that what you pay back each month, let's say, or each year, it's designed to be less than what your net benefits from that installation are. So you remain cash positive the entire time.
That's great.
And I think you need to earmark some funds for the structural analysis of these rooftops, because that's a big initial hurdle. That's the first thing every time I hop on a call with someone. I'm interested in the DEP grant, blah, blah, tell me all about it. I'm like, well, I can tell you all about it, but the first thing we need to do is get you through a structural analysis. Well, how much does that cost? Well, that can be anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 to $10,000, depending on the size of the building.
The city should be providing it for free if people want it. There is so much we can do and we're not doing. You can't
manage what you don't measure.
That's right.
But one thing I will not let go is this concept that we have to pay for that from the city itself. I think that there have to be incentives as well. But there's an insane amount of profit being made right now by our developers in our communities. And the fact that they don't want to leave and let go of any of that profit without some kind of matching from the city, I think is not only disingenuous, but I think it's dangerous for us to do. The leadership is in us, this policymakers. And I think we have to go and step forward and say, here's where we need you to go. Even if it means that it's less profit for you, because you're making billions of dollars, and we have to then fork over money is just the wrong way to think about this. The corporations, the Rebneys of the world, understand this. They're not dumb. They understand that there's a cash profit, but they don't want to do that initial investment, and I think that's wrong. And I think this is where we need to put policy forward to say, you got to do that. If you want to build in the city of New York, you're going to have to make that investment real.
90% of the buildings that will exist in New York City in the year 2100 already exist today. So it's important to understand that while new development, yes, absolutely going forward, we should be greening the rooftops. The bigger fish to fry are the retrofits of existing buildings.
Also, can I add on that I know that real estate developers have concerns about this, but imagine what the value of real estate will be in New York City when it becomes uninhabitable because it's too hot. It's not a pleasant place to be. It's overrun with pollution and asthma attacks. So
we're already there in so many cases. It's hard for me to think that this information is not with them right now, and the kind of notion that we have to meet them even halfway with city funding.
The Bronx River Alliance serves as a coordinated voice for the river and works in harmonious partnership with more than 100 organizations and agencies to protect, restore, and improve the Bronx River as an ecological, recreational, educational, and economic research. In the Bronx River, each year we have over 455 million gallons per year of untreated sanitary sewer and storm sewer going into our river, making it unsafe for our community members to fish, wade, and paddle after heavy storm events, and never safe to swim, which does occur despite our best efforts. GI solutions employed citywide can capture, filter, and slow, and ultimately reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that causes sewer system overflows. However, in the Bronx, we're faced with a high water table and high bedrock levels, so the DEP has not installed the planned green infrastructure as stated in the Bronx River Long-Term Control Plan. Not only have the GI milestones for stormwater management not been met citywide, the DEP does not believe it will be able to fully accomplish mitigating 14% of the 1-inch storm events by right-of-way installations in the Bronx River watershed. This means that without support for other stormwater solutions, CSOs will not be attenuated, yet our community ratepayers will still have to shoulder the burdens of the costs associated with the gray infrastructure of the LTCP. So thus we see this package of bills as being a good incentive. In addition to all the salient environmental benefits enumerated herein, the Bronx River Alliance would like to emphasize the need for GI in the Bronx as an economic boon. The Alliance employs a full-time conservation crew made up of hardworking local community members. We hire additional seasonal workers into an apprenticeship program where they learn skills necessary to enter the green job workforce, including construction, plant pallet selection, and maintenance of various GI techniques. However, the green job opportunities we were anticipating following discussions with the DEP regarding anticipated new employees that would be needed in the GI rollout did not materialize. We hope that with this renewed support for green roofs that the awaiting green workforce in the Bronx and beyond will gain employment opportunities.
Brooklyn Grange is a rooftop farming business, and we've been using green roofs as the basis for urban agriculture since we opened in 2010. We currently operate 3 rooftop farms located in Brooklyn and Queens, where we grow nearly 100,000 pounds of organic vegetables each year on a total of about 3.5 acres of green roof. In addition to growing food on green roofs, our farms host thousands of annual visitors, including about 8,000 local public school children each year. Brooklyn Grange's design build department also installs green roofs throughout New York City. We're strong proponents of green roofs, and we're eager for the leadership of New York City to take a more active role in incentivizing these installations in the name of improving our local environment and public health. But my colleagues and I can speak from experience. Green roofs are good for business. These businesses have a reputation for paving over Mother Nature, but as a green roofing contractor, I see real estate developers as my partners in building a greener New York City. It doesn't matter what a building is used for, how tall it is, or where it is. Green roofs can go anywhere and bring environmental benefits to any neighborhood.
The United Nations is calling for a new global accord on biological diversity. In 2020, countries from around the world will convene in Beijing to establish new goals for the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. The result will be an international pact to fight the global extinction climate crisis, equivalent to the Paris Climate Accord. The success of the United Nations agreement will hinge on the involvement of cities to leverage their resources, innovation, and influence. New York City should lead the fight with an expansive and forward-thinking urban ecological agenda. We need to ensure the resiliency of the city's natural areas by prioritizing native species, combating habitat loss, increasing access to nature in underserved neighborhoods, expanding the ecological economy. In doing so, New York City would set a global benchmark as a leader in resilient, livable cities worldwide. There are myriad ways to weave wildness back into the fabric of our neighborhoods, but such endeavors are not prioritized or funded. If we continue to define cities so narrowly as only hardscapes and humans, nature loses, and so do we. At this time, I'd like to call your attention to the New York Times Magazine from last month. There's an article highlighting the so-called insect Armageddon, the alarming collapse of insect populations around the world. This global devastation of wild insects is also happening here in our city. Legislating the use of native plants on green roofs is a good first step, but there is still much more work that needs to be done.
When we install green roofs and solar on our city-owned buildings, especially our schools, I'm a big proponent of us also having panels in those schools to say, here's how much greenhouse gas emissions have been stopped. Here's how much fossil fuels we didn't burn. Here's how much renewable energy has been created or how we've saved. If we can do that and build it into our curriculum, then it's an opportunity for not us to fight climate change on the big picture with those installations, but giving our young people an opportunity to learn.
At the Bronx River Alliance, we incorporate all of our green infrastructure installations into our education program. So we're planting native pollinator attracting native plants so that we're providing critical habitat for the populations of pollinators that are collapsing. But then also, because the Bronx is a food desert, we need that critical pollinator food source so that they can pollinate any food crops that are being planted. And in one of our parks, we have a foodway for people to come and harvest the food sustainably from the park, learn about it, learn native cooking techniques and medicinal uses of native plants. So it is absolutely part of our educational program. So thank you.
We are a green roof design and installation company that started in 2007. I really do want to say that I support a patchwork approach to making these bills pass, and I do think that the bills do need real work and organizational support and getting feedback from the real estate community. That does not mean watering it down. That does not mean reducing its scope. We need to make practical implementations of these ideas and this legislation. We have to have both a mandate and strong, significant incentives. The easiest mandate to follow through is, new construction. The expense of designing a green roof and building a green roof in the design phase is not that high. Retrofits are a lot more expensive, so that's the easiest low-hanging fruit to make a mandate. However, we are in an environmental emergency, and we are in a crisis, and we cannot lose sight of that. In the inspirational words of Greta Thunberg, the 15-year-old environmental activist, we do not want your hope. We do not want your support. We want your panic, and we want your action. So then we really, really need a property tax abatement, which is on the state level, and Stephen Levin has introduced that. While that's on the state level, you guys have the power to really push that and support it. $5.23 is a joke. $15 is great. We need this property tax abatement every single year that property owner is maintaining the green roof, because that property owner is investing the money in cleaning the air and the water of New York City, which honestly I do believe is New York City's job.
As an architect, I can definitely say that, and as someone who's been working in this field for 10 years, the buildings in this city are strong enough to put green roofs on them. I would definitely recommend adding new legislation that helps building owners in getting their properties structural assessment on the roof.
Hi everyone, I'm Misty Gonzalez and I am the founder and creative director of Hoarders Environmental Design, and I'm also a landscape specialist and specifications consultant with Robert Schwartz and Associates. What I would like everyone to consider, in addition to what we've already heard.
My name is Willis Elkins. I'm the executive director of the Newtown Creek Alliance, and I want to speak a little bit specifically about some of the direct impacts. We've talked a lot about stormwater management, but what it really means to me and my community and our constituents. So Newtown Creek, as many of you know, Superfund waterway, borders Queens and Brooklyn. We have severe historical contamination there as well, but we also suffer tremendously from combined sewer overflow. Every year our waterway, which is a small, narrow area, only 4 miles long, receives well over 1 billion gallons of combined sewage every single year. And as we know, this is caused by the way that our sewer system is designed, and rainwater, as little as sometimes 1/10 of an inch of a rain, can overwhelm our treatment plants and cause this untreated sewage to go into the waterway. The result of that, of course, is places like Newtown Creek, Flushing Creek, Bronx River, Gowanus Canal. All these vital community areas, or could be, more resources for the community, are failing to meet Clean Water Act standards that were set over 40 years ago. It's unsafe for human contact, and poses tremendous threat to the wildlife that is in the waterway and struggling to exist there. And it's really, as we heard before, the less than 0.1% of our rooftops actually capturing stormwater is a real travesty and needs to be changed. And it's the real the most obvious solution to preventing combined sewer overflow. Citywide, we heard earlier, again, the stat, over 20 billion gallons of untreated sewage every year entering New York Harbor. It's kind of insane that we're this far past the Clean Water Act, and yet we still have our waterways that are unfit for human contact. So I really just want to emphasize that point. There are direct impacts of stormwater. It's not just something we can talk about in vanity. I spend dozens and dozens of days out on the waterway dealing with the direct impacts, measuring water quality. Frankly, we need to see real action now and not wait 25 years. I am fortunate to be part of the 0.01% that works in a building that has a green roof on top. It's an amazing community resource, Kingsland Wildflowers. We bring school groups up there, community members use it as open space, and it's a wonderful asset and provides all these additional benefits for habitat, nature, connection to nature, and all that. So thank you for your time.
I just moved here actually from the Bay Area, where I was working in urban ag and green infrastructure type projects. And I'd like to say that first off, in California and in the West, we do not have the built environment to withstand snow, and to compare the West and the type of buildings that are built there and to look at the West as an equivalent is not true. New York City's buildings are meant to sustain greater weight in the winter, and thus you're at a huge comparative advantage to be able to be doing this kind of work. And so it's kind of frustrating to hear you guys compare those things when you're really at a big advantage. So I think in your conceptual framework around how we're doing in New York City, I think you should realize the comparative advantage that you guys have in your built environment. Secondly, I think that one of the big learnings I had listening to testimony was the co-benefits of putting solar and green infrastructure on roofs together, in that they double or a 15 to 25% increase in the efficiency of solar panels. That's a huge win, and I think that there should be recognition of that in whatever legislation that you do provide. If you use 2 of the sustainable roof methodologies on a single roof, that you should be reaping additional benefits for that kind of work instead of it being the same kind of incentive. And the third, I'd like to point out a New York City Housing Authority program called Access Solar, which enables community nonprofits and other small businesses to rent NYCHA roofs at no cost or low cost to implement solar projects. I think that that kind of model can open up a lot of New York City's rooftops for like more creative owners of those solar and green roof projects. It doesn't have to be the property owner that's investing and maintaining those kind of works. There's a lot of need within the community for green space and for cheaper renewable energy, and those smaller businesses and nonprofits can invest in opening up private rooftops that otherwise wouldn't be invested in.
This is a great framework. The problem with it, it's guaranteeing its own failure now because there's no water in it, because plants without water are black body radiators. So you can take a heat gun like this and point it at grass or at sedum, and it will, on a 95-degree day, it'll be 102, 104, same, it's all the same. And I brought a paper by Cynthia Rosenzweig, says the same thing. But the other side of it is there's also a plus, basically a multiple benefit, which is basically give me 600 million gallons a day of gray water in New York City, besides the stormwater. That is worth about 6 times our peak load requirement. I'm doing that valuation because every 33 gallons of water you evapotranspire from a green roof is basically worth a ton of air conditioning, basically worth something like 20-ish bucks. So the point is, the $6 we pay for each 100 cubic feet of water is worth $400 in cooling capacity. And I don't have one in Queens, but if you come to the Linda Tool Corporation in Brooklyn, he saves 40% of his air conditioning and 24% of his heating. But plants are not plants. Without water, they're black body radiators. And basically, the framework that is now in front of everyone is that we are basically, you walk into Central Park when it's dry a bunch of days, and it's going to be warm because it's actually, we know it from sweating. So it's also, the other way to say this is 16 grams of water are worth about a gram of Iraqi oil. Where do you want to get it and what do you want to do with it? Because the energy is energy is energy is energy.
Getting to the gentleman, Mr. Yeager there, talking about the buildings surrounded by other buildings having green. There are other methods of doing a good blue roof, green roof design there for stormwater management, which is really big here in New York City, thanks to a nice DEP grant that offers $30 a square foot. But unfortunately, it's not marketed to the owner-developer. They don't know about this. This is low-lying fruit that could be used by any owner or developer in private or in retrofits. So as for your school there at PS2 in Queens, which is a paver assembly, you could replace those pavers with a green tray holding the insulation down and still get a grant involved in that if you can. $30 is substantial. When you use a green tray, which weighs about 25 pounds, saturated wet, that could be in lieu of a paver that's sitting on top of insulation. That green tray, on average, is about $15 a square foot. That qualifies for a $30 grant. That offsets the cost of material and possibly installation, whether it's a union or non-union job. So in terms of green infrastructure, this has to be done. And if you don't know, Storm Sandy was the big wake-up call. It's managing water in our city. If you have a quarter inch of rain, it goes through our sewer system, which is well over 100 years old. If you break one of those sewer pipes, it's going to cost you millions of dollars to repair it. We have to slow the migration of water down. By having green and solar and all the wonderful things on top, that's a great benefit to ownership. But you have to show the owner-developer where the money's at so they could put it back in. If you do a blue roof in new construction, you have a stormwater retention tank that's below grade, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. If you do a blue roof using all those concrete platforms that they're building already to put waterproofing on that, that could be taken out, saving owners cost, major costs on that by doing a blue roof on that. So there are a lot of great stuff. You should get involved, owner and developers. I don't think there are any here. You should have them involved and hear their input. You should also have waterproofing manufacturers that have all this research and information on that, because when you do a blue roof or a garden roof, you want to make sure that building's watertight, does not leak. And manufacturers can offer warranties for 30 years of labor and material covering everything on that roof, from the green to the insulation for R value and the waterproofing done by an applicator.
So with that, I will say that we are grateful to the administration. It looks like we are there in support of these bills. We're looking forward to seeing them passed very soon. With that, I'll gavel this hearing of the Environmental Protection Committee closed.